the story that started it all, and what happens when a normal Connecticut businessman questioning his life choices suddenly gets embroiled in something way over his head. Want to know? Then let's kick in the door.
You needn't bother to come to the door. I'll let myself in.
So in December of 1922, Black Mask magazine published a story that would change everything. It would revolutionize TV, movies, and books. A short story by Carol John Daly called The False Burton Combs, the first ever hard-boiled detective story. So this 30-page short story is out there in various anthologies, but I managed to find a copy on the internet and print it out as well, so it is available if you want to read it. So we are introduced to our no-name protagonist. He's never actually named in the story, and he doesn't consider himself a gumshoe or a detective or a fixer. I would have called him a fixer. He refers to himself as a gentleman adventurer. So our hero is minding his own business on a boat when he notices he's very obviously being watched and followed by someone. He doesn't recognize the man and doesn't know what he wants. Eventually his stalker makes himself known, goes up and talks to our hero, and tells him dead out that yes, he's been watching him and he wants to speak to him because he has a proposition for him. He tells him his name is Burton Combs, and the fact is he thinks people are after him. He crossed the wrong people, and he's heard that people are coming for him. And since then, he hasn't been able to get any sleep. He's exhausted and just wants to get some sleep. He doesn't have a room on the boat, has nowhere to go, and offers our hero a large amount of money to be able to use his bed and have him watch over him while he can get some sleep. Our gentleman adventurer agrees and takes him to his stateroom and lets him get some shut-eye. But we quickly find out that there's more going on than just that, because Burton Combs is actually the last surviving heir to a very expensive, luxurious hotel, and he's on his way to this hotel now. But the fact is, these men really are looking for him, and he's in fear for his life. So he ups the ante, offers him more money for another favor. What he wants is our hero to take his place, pretend to be him, and go to the hotel. He tells him dead out that either these men will kill him instead, and therefore he'll be in the free and clear, thinking that he's been offed and they don't have to worry about him anymore, or our hero will take care of business and get rid of the men hunting for him, and he'll be able to take his rightful place in the hotel. As nobody who's there has ever seen Burton Combs before, it'll be easy for him to slip in and pretend to be him, especially since they have a similar look. Our hero agrees and goes to the hotel to take his place. Now, this being a crime and mystery, I don't want to give anything away, but I want to tell you that this was published in 1922, and it did not feel like it. This did not feel any different than any other hard-boiled detective novel you would have read through the 30s, 40s, or 50s. It was well done. It was well written. The prose on it did not feel dated, and the story was clever. It was fun, and it really was enjoyable. I had a good time with this. For 30 pages, it felt a lot deeper. I can see why this story would have inspired others to copy his style, and why it would have inspired a new genre and a new style of writing that really did catch on, because this was highly enjoyable. Even now, even 100 years later, this story really worked, and I really had a good time with it. And I highly suggest you track this down and find a copy, because it's worth the effort, especially for 30 pages. You're going to get more than your money's worth out of it. So that was a little bonus for the first episode of Ink and Ammo Hard-Boiled Bookshelf. Now let's talk about Edward S. Aaron's Catspaw Ordeal. This particular one is a Fawcett Gold Medal book, and this story was originally published in 1950. And if you look at the little blurb down here, or even the one on the back, it really has nothing to do with the story. So just keep putting that out there. Danny Archer is part owner of the Manning Archer Metallurgy, and that's thanks to the investment of his wife and his brother-in-law, Stanley Manning. When we first meet Danny, he's getting drunk in a bar. His wife, Rosalind, had just left him after 5 years so that he could make a choice. She thinks he's still in love with his ex, Della. And to be honest, Danny is questioning his life choices. He's himself wondering if maybe he's still in love with Della, because he thinks about her a lot. But while Danny's in here getting drunk, he realizes there's a guy with some girl over in the booth behind him who's eyeing him, staring at him, watching him intently. And it's ticking him off. So this guy's name is Skip Moore. And Danny gets upset and he's drinking and already angry and confronts him, and it turns into a brawl in the bar. And they manage to break up the brawl, and he takes off and he decides he's going to go hang out and cool off at the beach. So when he gets to the beach, he's actually jumped and beaten up even worse. Miracle of miracles, who saves him? The ex he hasn't seen in 5 years, Della. So she takes him back to his empty house and nurses his wounds until he falls asleep. When he wakes up the next morning, he realizes something's not quite right. Something's wrong in his house. He actually sees signs of a former friend of his, Burke Wiley, who, as far as he knows, is dead. But in his mind, there's no mistaking that his dead best friend was somehow there. He sees the cigar he smokes and other signs that make him question what's happening. So Della's still there, and he hunts her down, finds her in his wife's clothes, and confronts her about what his suspicions are. And eventually she confesses that Burke Wiley was there. He is still alive, and she's known for a few months. So he gets a ride into work from his brother-in-law, Stanley, and later on, his brother-in-law bursts into his office screaming at him, telling him he knows that he's had a woman in the house and he knows she's still there. And obviously, Danny's pretty upset by this. How does he know what's going on? What is he being watched? Why is he being questioned? So then he starts questioning the secretary about some suspicions he has regarding the company's numbers and books. And none of this goes over really well. He leaves work in a huff and goes in search of the girl that he saw with Skip Moore the night before, because he wants to know what's going on and why he's being watched and who this guy is. When he tracks her down, she doesn't know anything. In fact, she doesn't even know where Skip is. He's disappeared and she doesn't know where he went. The only thing she does know is that for some reason, Skip is really upset with Danny, and it has something to do with Della. So Danny heads back home, and when he gets there, he realizes his house has been turned upside down. It's been ransacked. It's a disaster. But he can't find anybody in the house currently. So he heads downstairs and realizes pretty quickly he's mistaken, because there is somebody there. Skip Moore is dead in front of his ham radio with his head bashed in. And in fact, there is somebody else in the house. Got goosebumps. So I'm not going to tell you much more, because this really is a crime mystery with twists and turns. And I don't want to give anything away, because I'm going to suggest that you go find this and read it. Spoiler alert. Now, there is a really good crime story here. So the crime story is good, but it's nothing that will blow your mind or nothing you haven't kind of seen before. It's just really well done, and I really enjoyed my time with the story. Where this book gives you something more, and why I'm definitely going to suggest it to you, is Ahrens gives you something a little extra. You realize in the last third of the book that he's not just telling you a crime story, he's giving you a love story. And not like you're used to, and not like in a way that's real obvious. Every one of us has been on this side of the fence and looked across and thought the grass is always greener. Everybody knows that cliche. And everybody's been there. Everybody's looked at the neighbor's yard, so to speak, and thought, that's what I want, and been unhappy with their own choices. What you never really think about is how much manure was poured into that lawn and what's going on underneath it. So in this case, Ahrens is telling the story of a man that's embroiled in a crime that's way above his pay grade and was not of his making. But he's also telling the story of a man realizing that sometimes what you really want in life is what you've already got. And going and looking for that excitement or that lost love isn't really what you wanted. It's just that what you don't have always looks greener. So there was a point where this book kind of turned and made that storyline much more obvious of what was going on. It was a little abrupt and could have been a little more subtle. But the fact that Ahrens gave you this storyline as a complement to the crime storyline was what was really trying to be said in the book in the first place. The story he really wanted to tell. The crime story was there as a hook, as the surface to cover what was going on underneath this in this character. And I think it was really well done. I mean, I seriously enjoyed this book. And I think Ahrens did a great job of like burying the lead until he needed it and getting your focus on the crime. And this is just a story about an everyday guy whose life happens to get turned upside down. And it was effective and well done. The prose, Edward S. Aaron's prose is really good. It's really clear, it's really strong, and when you read him, everything he's trying to get across comes across clearly. The story wraps up really well, and in the 160 pages of this book, I never found myself bored. I enjoyed the entire time with it, and thought the characters were really well done, and at the same time, recognizable characters for the era and the style of story being told. It felt comfortable without tropes. It was a unique story. While the crime may have been something you've seen before and done similarly, and the twists and turns are not world-shattering, they're good enough to keep your attention and make your eyes widen a little bit and enjoy the ride. If you can get into the story, you're really going to just enjoy this character's journey as you see this everyman go from an angry, bitter man deeply involved in something that has nothing to do with him to a guy who realizes he loves his wife and his life isn't so bad. And I'm not really giving you spoilers because for this book, it's about the journey. And seeing that story unfold is just fantastic. And I highly, highly recommend it. So if you can hunt down the Catspaw Ordeal, I'd say you do it, add it to your collection. If you're a fan of hard-boiled and old-school detective-type novels, you're probably going to enjoy this. And I'm going to give it a 4.25 out of 5, right between Whiskey Neat and Top Shelf Bourbon. And I want to thank you for joining me on the first hard-boiled bookshelf. There'll be more coming, and I hope you come back for it.
No, that'll be all. Just be sure to lock the door behind you on your way out.